Right. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to be speaking about the growth of the Python community in Africa. So, I'm going to start off by telling you guys a bit about myself. My name is Marlene Mhangami. Like Aisha said, I'm from Harare, Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is actually a country that's really far down. It's in the south of Africa, just above South Africa. It's a really great country if you guys want to visit. I'm sure that you would enjoy yourself, so feel free to come and visit Zimbabwe. A bit more about myself, I'm the director and co-founder of an organization called ZimboPy. And what my organization does is we try and we teach Python programming to girls in underserved areas of the city of Harare. And our hope with this is to be able to give these girls a skill that they can leverage later on in life to maybe, lift themselves a bit out of poverty. So it's something I'm really passionate about. The picture on the screen is me and some of my girls there. And yeah, I really enjoy it. You can find more information about that on Twitter or on the internet. I'm also, as Aisha said, a director at the Python Software Foundation. And most of this speech I'm going to be talking about how the PSF has been involved and is really invested in the growth of Python here in Africa. So a bit more about the PSF and what we do. The PSF is a non-profit organization that's based in the United States. It holds the IP rights behind Python. And it also organizes the annual conference that is PyCon USA. And this is basically like the PyCon of PyCons, So last year it was held in Portland, Oregon. This year, this coming year in 2018, it's usually around May. And I think it's going to be in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's a really great opportunity. If any of you guys would like to actually attend that, the PSF gives a lot of financial aid. If you actually get a talk or if you want to do a proposal, like a tutorial or even a poster, the PSF really gives a lot of good financial aid for that. So you can actually attend and they should pay for everything if your talk gets accepted. So to apply for that, you can actually go on pycon.com or .org, I think, and apply. So the mission of the Python Software Foundation is to promote, protect, and advance the Python programming language and to support and facilitate the growth of a diverse and international community of Python programmers. So if you can see on the screen, I highlighted diverse and international community. And the reason being is because the PSF really, really wants to promote, protect, and advance Python, across the globe. So it's a really central part of the mission in order to grow diversity around the world, specifically in Africa as well. And the way the PSF does this is in three major ways. The first one is intellectual property. The second is through growing the membership of the organization. And the third is through dealing with money. So looking a bit closer into each of these things, when we talk about intellectual property, the PSF actually holds and protects the intellectual property associated with Python. So with Python and the Python community as well. So like the word Python itself, obviously there is another meaning for the word Python that is maybe not always liked. But whenever Python, the word Python is associated with software, the PSF actually has the rights over that intellectual property. Even words like PyCon or PyLadies, what the PSF will do is try to protect the way those words are used and the way they affect the community. So if you ever see the words being misused or anything like that, you can just shoot us an email and we usually will try to monitor that. Another thing that the PSF is concerned about is about trademarks and logos. So, for example, the two snakes logo that is up there on the screen. If, for example, you wanted to make a clothing line or some sort of merchandise or something like that, if a member of the community wanted to sell that merchandise to people, you can actually go ahead and do that if you wanted to use the original PSF logo. And for the most part, if it's not being used in something that's like a crazy way or something like that. The PSF actually doesn't mind if you make money off of that, but we do ask that for every $1,000 you make, you donate 10% of that per year back into the community and back to the PSF. So if you wanted to do something like that, that's also an option. So membership is another thing that we focus on. I forgot the G at the end of Python. It says python.org, but it's supposed to be python.org. But if you wanted to find out more information about membership or to sign up, I'm going to be talking a bit more about this, but if you wanted to sign up for this, you can visit python.org, and it's really a simple process. But the majority of the work that we do as the PSF is focused on empowering and supporting people within the Python community. And a major part of that is that we want the community to be as representative as possible. And so that means that we need members from across the globe, whether whatever country you're from, whatever your background. If you're not even a programmer, we still want members to be part of the Python Software Foundation, to be able to make decisions that are going to benefit people across the spectrum in our community. So when I talk about membership, it's really, really important that if you guys want to see Africa represented in sort of the decision-making process that the PSF does, we really, really need you guys to be part of the community, signing up as members, voting actively on laws and things like that. So it doesn't just benefit people in the US or in Europe, but it also benefits us here in Africa. So the first type of membership you could sign up for is called basic or non-voting members. These are just people that want to say, hey, I support the PSF, I support the growth of the Python language, and I just want to make that publicly known. These members are, it's a really, really easy process to sign up for that. You just visit the website and you fill out a form, and it just is showing that you support the PSF. And you can also get more information by signing up to a mailing list once you're a member. So that's a great way if you don't really have much time to contribute. Another thing is a supporting member. So if you want to do, these are members of the community that sign up to give an annual donation to the PSF. And it can be as small as $5 a year. But once a year, supporting members, they just give money to the PSF, which is another way to help the growth. And contributing members are another group. And these people basically just dedicate at least on a minimum 5 hours of volunteer service in terms of contributing to software that promotes the Python language. So this is like, if you contribute even now to any open source maybe technologies, or if you are working on any projects that are Python based, you can go ahead and actually sign up as a contributing member. And the minimum requirement is just 5 hours a month for that. So if you're interested in that, definitely do that. Another thing is you can sign up to be a managing member as well. And these members, basically what they do is they run either workshops or things of that nature, and they also dedicate 5 hours of their time to making sure that they're maintaining the structure and the ecosystem of the Python community. So that's an option. And finally, they're fellows. And basically what a fellow is this is someone that the community has identified and said, this is someone that we feel like is really contributing to the growth of Python, and so we want to acknowledge this person and make them we want to acknowledge what they've been doing for the community, and usually they're just voted in. There's actually a list of past fellows on python.org if you want to see sort of the requirements for that. And some of the benefits of being a member is that all members, I think except basic members, are allowed to vote. So I was voted in this year to the board of directors, and I was voted in by members. So if you want to see more maybe Africans on the board, or you want to see someone from your community on the board, or if you see bylaws in the PSF's growth or system that you would like to change, if you're a member, you have the opportunity to vote on these issues. And so it's really something that's a big benefit. You also get information on events and things of that nature. We also get benefits like tickets sometimes are given out to different members of the community, tickets to PyCons and things like that. So I would definitely say it's worth your while for voting. Then money. The PSF does get income, and even though we're a nonprofit, because we're a nonprofit organization, the majority of the money that the PSF has comes from donations from, like I said, members or people, in the community. The second thing, we also get money from sponsorship from organizations that want to see maybe Python developing faster, organizations that use Python. Different companies sponsor the PSF. And also the main source of income that the PSF gets is from PyCon US. This is where we actually make the majority of the money that is given out, in the various ways. So where does the money go to? The money that this PSF earns goes to paying the staff. So surprisingly, even though Python is such an international organization, it's run by 4 people, which is really crazy to me. When I found that out, I was like, what's going on? But these are really amazing staff members, and they are also paid through the income that the PSF gets. The board, which I'm a part of, actually doesn't get paid directly by the PSF. It's just the main staff members. The money also goes to funding things like grant requests. So we actually have an active grant program that we support things like sprints, conferences, meetups, user groups, and any Python development across the world. So, I was telling a lot of people, I was speaking to a number of people these past couple of days, and we were talking about how if you have some initiatives that you have in mind, if you have maybe an idea for a workshop where you want to teach a certain group, or if you're a group of Python programmers and you'd like to arrange a meetup that you meet once a month or something like that to discuss Python or things of that nature, the PSF can actually sponsor those meetings and pay for maybe your food or your venue and things of that nature. So please, if you are interested in those things, there's more information on the website. It's a pretty easy process. If you just, there's a grant request form that will tell you exactly what you need to send on the website, and we actively fund things of that nature in order to grow the community. Also Django Girls, things like that are things that we fund as well. So on to the main part of my speech. I'm going to be using grant distribution as a measure of seeing exactly how the community around Africa has been growing. So the great thing about money is that you can see if the PSF has given grants in a certain area, we can assume that the community there is either growing or it's starting to grow. And so that's the main way I'm going to be measuring growth in this talk. So starting off in 2010 this was the first time the PSF actually started giving out funds. And in 2010, if you can see, the blue spots marked are the places where grants were given to new user groups or conferences and things like that across the globe. And at that time, the only places that were receiving grant money were user groups in North America, in Europe, Australia, and South Africa was actually the only African country that received grant funding or had an active community in 2010, which is, really interesting. PyCon ZA, which is South Africa's annual PyCon, is actually one of the oldest PyCons in the world, and this community is really well developed. Ivan is from South Africa. He's been to a lot of them. I haven't actually attended a PyCon in South Africa yet, but I'm hoping to attend in October. The CFP is still, the call for proposals for that is still open if any of you would like to go. It's held in Cape Town every year, and it's a really good event. But yeah, South Africa is one of the first groups in Africa to actually have been receiving funding from the PSF. Then it's interesting to note that for the first 4 years that the PSF was giving out grant money, South Africa was the only country in Africa that was receiving money from grants. So I would be interested maybe later on to kind of hear what you guys think is the reason for that lag. There's some issues that we face in Africa that are definitely unique, challenges that are unique to Africa. I know in Zimbabwe sometimes there's a lot of things like bureaucracy where, for example, in our universities in Zimbabwe, it's really difficult to introduce new languages, new coding languages, even in computer science programs, because of the different levels of bureaucracy that you have to go through. We're trying to figure out ways to be able to help, communities be able to introduce Python in university learning settings, maybe trying to go around bureaucracy, like things like starting clubs at universities and schools to teach Python that way so that we can encourage growth and maybe go around the system. But I would love to hear from you guys ideas of maybe why some of that growth was not happening earlier on and how we can sort of remedy that. But finally, in 2014, we saw 3 new countries getting funding. So all of the countries in yellow are the countries that were impacted with grant money by the PSF or aid. And in 2014, Namibia, Cameroon, and Kenya all received funding from the PSF. And this is a really, really cool story, particularly with Namibia, because it's a story about how the international community can band together and help forward the aim of the PSF in terms of growing Python. So what happened in the case of Namibia was a group in a country called in Wales, which is close to the UK there, I'm not really sure, but a group from a university called Cardiff University they worked on a project called the Phoenix Project. And basically this project was in the hopes to develop the Python and open source community in Namibia in Africa. So they saw that the Python community was not really growing as exponentially as everywhere else in Africa, and that the only place was South Africa that we were seeing growth. So this group from a different continent altogether were just like, hey, we want to figure out a way that we can go ahead and help the growth in Africa grow more rapidly. And so they partnered together with the University of Namibia. They looked for people who knew Python and were programming in Python in Namibia. And they planned to host the first ever PyCon Namibia. The plan started in 2014, and they started applying for funding then. But the actual event, I think, was in 2015, the first one. And it was really a great event where a lot of African people who were from the surrounding countries got inspiration. I think definitely PyCon Zimbabwe was inspired by that first conference in Namibia. And then from there, I think PyCon Nigeria was also, if I'm not mistaken, somehow also inspired by that same conference. So it was really a great story of how if we are active in our community and we see other places where growth needs to happen and we initiate that growth, it can really expand beyond what we can think. Also in Cameroon and Kenya, they applied for funding, but for smaller user groups and workshops. They haven't, neither of those countries actually, though they were among the first to actually get funding from the PSF, none of those countries have PyCon. So that's really interesting. If anyone has connections there or anything like that, feel free to encourage a PyCon to start. This is places where we would really like to see growth. But in 2015, I think this is fate. I don't know about you guys, but 2015 was the year when both Zimbabwe and Nigeria had their first sort of Python events, Python-related events. And this is a really great year. In Zimbabwe, we actually had we started planning for our first ever PyCon Zim. And the first PyCon Zim was in 2016 was actually when we hosted it. So the second one happened 2 weeks ago. We just had a pretty successful conference. I'm surprised because I feel like, PyCon Nigeria, this is a really well-attended event for the first ever PyCon. Zimbabwe, we're still growing the community, but our second PyCon went really well. There were lots of great speakers. We had Africans from about 5 different African countries and a few visitors as well. But we are seeing growth in Zimbabwe in terms of people using Python more. We're trying to get companies to really see the value, I think, in supporting communities. And we also have a lot of growth in terms of Django girls. We see a lot of workshops. I think this year so far we've had like 5 Django girls events in different cities across Zimbabwe. And also with my own organization, we really are trying to, for the most part, focus on also trying to use Python for more social justice issues where we can see it being used to help and develop our communities. Nigeria, actually you guys are here, and this is obviously this is the first PyCon Nigeria to have ever been hosted. But actually in 2015, we saw an application for the first event that was centered around Python, and this was actually the CoDes workshop, and it was actually hosted here in Lagos. But something that, across the board, we talk about this all the time, is how we've been so amazed at the growth we are seeing in the Python community here in Nigeria. In 2015, there was one event that was hosted, a Python event. Then in 2016, there were 13. Then in 2017, I think more than 35 events have been sponsored and held here in Nigeria. So you guys are really doing amazing. Yes, clap for yourselves. It just is amazing. It really is amazing. And we are really, really inspired by that. I'm here also to kind of learn and try to understand how that growth has been happening. I would love to hear from you guys if you have any ideas on why exactly it's growing so quickly here, and the community is so strong. In Southern Africa, we are seeing growth, but definitely not at the pace that is happening here in Nigeria. So I would love to hear more from you guys on why you think that is. But really such a great job to all your organizers. So right now in 2017, there are currently 15 countries with active Python user groups or conferences and things of that nature. We have amazing, sometimes I'm really surprised by some of the grant requests that come in to host Python related events. Countries like, Sierra Leone or Gambia. The other day we got a request coming in from the Gambia, which I thought was really interesting. I would love to see more growth in the northern part of Africa. It doesn't seem to be have been touched a lot. So if any of you guys know any Pythonistas in Egypt or any of the upper northern areas, we would love to see more growth there. But really, it's been really encouraging to see since 2010, only having Python activity, related activity in South Africa, and then growing that all the way up to now where we have 15 is quite a feat, and I can see that it can really grow a lot more if we band together. So I would love for you guys to actually be part of encouraging that growth, and I've just come up with a few ways that you can actually help facilitate the growth of Python in Africa and sort of join on board in partnership with the PSF to do this. So the first few ways that you can do this is to support new conferences, either local conferences or regional conferences. So, Aaron is from Ghana, and he's actually here today. And we were actually discussing how Ghana wants to have their first PyCon Ghana next year in 2018. And because it's so close to Nigeria, I would definitely encourage you guys to apply to go and speak at PyCon Ghana. You can follow their Twitter page. I think it's just PyCon Ghana on Twitter. and look out for the call for proposal for talks and things like that. Travel and go and support the conference. It really helps when different African countries go and support each other. So I would really encourage you guys to do that. I'm excited to see it and hope to attend next year for sure. So make sure to follow that on the page and tweet about it as well to say you're excited. Another thing is that we want to see more regional conferences. So even if you want to get involved in the planning of conferences, you are able to do that. You know, you can just come and find me afterwards and let me know exactly how you'd like to be involved. DjangoCon Africa is going to be happening next year. We're in the midst of planning for that. So that's something I'm really excited about. If you would like to be on the planning committee for that, or even I'm sure we're planning maybe the next year in 2019 to maybe host our first PyCon Africa, but I would love to have as many of you as possible be involved in that planning process. Another thing you can do is organize. So there are DjangoCon user groups, there are user groups and Django Girls events, workshops and things of that nature that you can be a part of organizing, and I would encourage you to do that. You know, even if you wanted to start your own organization, I started my organization because I saw a need in the community and decided that I wanted to use Python to meet that need. So if you want to do that, again, like there is so much funding available from the PSF to be able to do these things. So please, if you are going to do that, feel free to apply for grant funding from the PSF or from the Django Software Foundation or even from GitHub that are always willing to fund events of that nature. Then finally, like I said before, become a part of the community. This is the best way for you to help grow Python and help further the mission, because just having your voice, even attending conferences that are outside of Africa, you know, if you just want to travel, you know, for free or something like that, there's always a PyCon in almost every country around the world. So if you apply to go and speak, usually there's financial aid. And the great thing about having you guys in the audience at some of these events is that you represent you know, a different culture, a different perspective, and sharing your opinion is something that's really, really needed across the board. So I would encourage you guys to get involved, plug in, sign up as a member on, it's just the Python software, no, I think it's python.org, yeah, it's python.org, where you can sign up as a member and start contributing and helping to see more of the growth of Python in Africa. And I'm excited to see Python take over Africa. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or do we have time for a question? Okay.
Thank you so much, Marlene.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, any question, please? Questions?
What? Okay. Oh, there's someone there.
What's the biggest challenges you faced in trying to grow Python in Africa, and how have you solved them?
Right. You know, for me, I would say that specifically when it comes to Zimbabwe, I think the major problem with Zimbabwe is trying to get past some of the bureaucracy that's there. You know, in universities, we tend to be slow. Someone even mentioned it yesterday. We tend to be slow adapters of technology. So sometimes in Africa, it's a struggle to get new things introduced. And so I think that, you know, if universities are not maybe teaching Python, or if companies are not super excited to take on a new language or something of that nature, it's always a good idea to try and encourage user groups or clubs to form around those institutions. And I'm assuming that if we just encourage the community to grow there, sometimes the institutions will also follow that up. So I'm hoping to see more growth in universities and places like that as well.
Thank you very much. It was exactly the question I wanted to ask. If there are user groups that takes the Python training or teachings to universities, just like we have for Loop and Laravel and the likes.
I couldn't hear that question. I'm sorry. What did you say? Could you
I was
speak up?
asking if there are user groups that takes the Python, the training to universities across Africa. Like if you want to have a license for a user group that trains people in universities.
Okay, right. Are there user groups that train people in universities? Yeah, I think they are. I know that where I'm from, there's actually some clubs that are formed on local campuses, but I also know that there's an education group. There's a mailing list that specifically deals with education, so if you need resources on that in terms of how to grow a user group, you can always sign up for the mailing list. I'll tweet out a link at it for that mailing list. I'll try and do that and remember to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene.
No
Please,
problem.
we have Django Girls, PyCon, GitHub. Are there other technical communities around Python that are also helping, like not just Django Girls? You know, we know Django Girls teach web, and do we have other, like the GIS community or any other technical community around Python? Or can we start our own communities?
Right. Yeah, I would always encourage, I'm always saying that I would love to see more sort of homegrown communities forming. Like I mentioned before, my own organization, we started it by ourselves. It's called Zimbabwe, and we decided we just wanted to do something that was really geared towards issues that we were facing in Africa and issues that we saw in our community. And sometimes the programs that are there, Django Girls, whatever it is, don't address those problems. And so I would encourage you to start your own workshops, start your own organizations that center around Python. There are user groups. There's a PyCon Africa mailing list. If you guys want to join that mailing list, it's there and available for us to talk about how to address some of the problems, how to form user groups or whatever it is. But I'd love to see more African, work groups and things of that nature. So definitely encourage it.
I'm going to ask the last question.
Yes.
Hope that's fine. Okay. So my question is that what sparked your interest in Python? I mean, we have young kids here, and I'd like them to learn from your own story.
Okay.
So
So my story is kind of crazy, but I'm actually at university. I studied molecular biology, and I really, when I studied outside of Zimbabwe, so I went out of the country and studied a bit in the US. But when I came back home, I really saw when I was in the US how quickly technology can solve problems. And I was just like, I would really like to see more technology implemented in order to solve social problems that I was seeing in my community. I specifically wanted to encourage girls to program and be in the forefront of technology. So I'm so excited to see, like, there's these 4 tiny girls at the front. I don't know if you guys can see them. They're 5, actually. It's so great. But I love to see girls involved in programming because I really see the place where technology is going. And I was actually talking about it that 10, 20 years down the line, Africa is not going to look, like it's looking today. It's really going to advance quickly. And I think that programming, technology, all these things are going to be at the forefront. And so if we're empowering people across our communities, I think technology is the best thing to empower them with. So for me, one of the reasons why I decided to focus on programming, and specifically Python is really easy to learn. It's pretty user-friendly. The community, actually, more so than anything else, is amazing. They're always willing to support. So if you want to do anything, the Python community is ready to band around you. They're ready to fund your ideas, things of that nature. And so I was really drawn in really mostly by the community, and also what I could see long term we could achieve towards like through technology and things of that nature. So for me, I didn't start out in Python, but I ended up going in because I see it just is really great. I just really like it.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, you asked the question, so I'm going to throw it to the house if anyone has an answer. You said, what is driving the rapid adoption of Python in this community? So you would like to know.
Yes,
so
I'd love
does
to
anyone
know.
have answer for Marlene about that? What is, okay.
Yeah.
So, as a member of PSF Grants Committee, I think what is driving it in this part of the world is the money that is involved. Yes. And we've learned to sieve out those, because as you are mentioning money now, I can tell you that by the time we're downstage, the requests coming to PSF for grants will increase. Okay, so if we learn to sieve out those and find those that are genuine, then we'll be able to cover more grounds.
Okay.
But then initially I noticed the money was, because at the point the inflation rate in the country was so high, at that period we were getting almost 2 requests every week coming in from Nigeria for grants.
Right.
So if you are going to be asking for grants, grants are only given out to something that is genuine, because we'll discuss and vote on it.
Right.
It's not that automatic at the end of the day. But then there are those that are genuine indeed. They really want to take this technology down. Those in the north have been doing wonderful things. Down to Borno, we have a lot of issues there, but then you find Django girls have been held there.
Right.
Okay, so that's just it.
Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
I think Chicks covered this, but any addition to what he said? Good. We'll be taking more questions. You can see Marlene afterwards. Sorry about that.